Welcome back, Classpad users. So I want to kind of show some quick little explorations you can do with lower grades, elementary, lower middle school. And I'm going to use some geometry here. So let's get our geometry sticker out. And there's my geometry sticky. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. And obviously with elementary students, I don't want to have to go into how do you use the tool to measure and those types of things. I want to do things that are quick. I want to teach them what measurement is, what we mean by certain vocabulary words. So I want to do things that are relatively simple. And that is one of the nice things about Classpad.net is I have this draw tool. So students don't have to actually know how to use. They can just use their finger if they have a touch screen or their mouse. So I am going to turn off labeling. It doesn't really matter, but I kind of like to not have labeling on. So let's say I told my students, make 3, this is an angle, okay? So let's just make a angle. And I want to talk about the words acute, obtuse, and right. So I could even then pull in a text sticky here, and let's think about acute, right? So I don't want them to have to measure as far as actually using the tool to measure. I want them to be measuring with a protractor. When we're talking about angles at this lower grade in particular, we want to be teaching them how to use the tool. The great thing about this is if you go down here to our text options, we have the ability to pull in a protractor. And it comes in the standard size. I can make it a little bigger if my students are having a hard time seeing it. So I don't know, let's make it 15. It'll just make it a little bigger. And that makes it nice and easy. So now you can move the protractor simply by selecting the center point, and you can turn it by the one on the right. So I tell my students, okay, let's actually measure this angle. So I could be teaching them very quickly how to use the protractor to measure. We're going to put the protractor center point on the vertex of an angle, and then we're going to move the protractor so that it lies, that 0 line lies on the side of the angle, right? And so then here are my degree measures. So this angle is not quite 90, could be 85, like 86, right? So now I can say, well, this is called an acute angle. So let's do a couple more acute angles, right? So then you could have them, let's just draw another one, or they could change that one if they want. I could just say, okay, now I want you, this angle right here is another example of an acute angle. And this angle right here is another example of an acute angle. And you could do several different examples, have them, what is that measurement? What are you seeing? And now what do we think acute angles are? Well, all of them so far are, numbers less than 90, but maybe they haven't figured that out yet. So then you could say, okay, well, we've given you some examples of acute angles, but now this angle right here, that is not acute. That is what we call a right angle. It is not an acute angle. And this angle right here is not an acute angle. So you could give them examples and non-examples and have them really think about what is making an angle acute and have them come up with their own definitions themselves. And then they could then write it down, and hopefully they're going to, after many examples, say acute angles measure less than 90 degrees. Right? So observation, making conjectures, testing things that are and are not, so examples and non-examples, looking for those attributes. What do they all have in common? What do they not have in common? Those types of things to help them come up with on their own. Very quick, very easy, because we have this really nice protractor tool that we can use. And so let's scroll down a little bit. We could do the same thing here. Let's just pull up another geometry sticky. And this time, let's make a polygon, right? So let's, I don't know, let's start with a triangle. So here's a polygon, a triangle that I've done, and I could do the same thing. I could pull in that protractor, and again, we might want to make it a little bigger. It sort of depends on your students, but I like to have the numbers big. And if I don't like where things are, I can move them. Remember, this is all dynamic. And we could talk about, well, this triangle, let's figure out what kind of triangle this is. So let's measure all the angles. So they could measure the angles of the triangle. Now we're really getting some practice with our protractor. So we've got an angle that's like 40, I don't know, 47. And then I have let's move it and measure the other triangle. And so they're really getting a lot of hands-on practice, very easy. So let's measure this angle. And that one looks like it's like 89. And then let's measure this third one here. And I maybe need to make my window a little bigger. There we go, because I lost my protractor. And that's like 47. So this triangle is what I'm going to call an acute triangle. And so what do you think that means? Well, we just talked about acute angles. How do I make that connection? All these angles here were less than 90. So maybe that's what an acute triangle is. So let's see if we can do another example of an acute triangle. So you can really start exploring very quick, very easy, because you're just drawing a shape with your hands. You don't have to know how to construct. You just draw. And then you have this protractor tool that is really, really incredibly helpful and helps you make some conjectures. So start thinking about Classpad.net as a way to help with elementary and lower middle school grades as well. Introductory type geometry activities is what I've shown you here.